roll, man.
Okay,
So
it's time to go.
No, wait a minute.
hold on.
Oh, now we're ready.
Now we're ready. Now we're ready to go. Are we ready? Clap. Do the clap. All right, here we go.
Oh, that
ready?
was, come on, dude. That
I mean,
wasn't a clap.
well,
We got to do it.
All right, here we go.
Act like you're turning on a light.
There we go. Clap on, clap off. Right. That's the clapper. All right, let's rock this thing. Well, thanks everybody for listening in to today's podcast from Building a Refuge, otherwise known as The Bar. We're hanging out here in a pretty amazing spot in the woods with two amazing guys and our co-founder Erik over here on the other side, right? This is a little bit of a different environment that we've been in before. We're usually all locked into a studio, but this is the real deal out here, right?
Yeah, this is cool out here.
Yeah, this is the real deal. So, but you can go out and find us, like us on YouTube, all the social media channels that you can hunt Building a Refuge, hunt us down, like us, leave us comments, all that good jazz. We're just a bunch of goofy dudes, I think, trying to make a way in this world around men's mental health, and we do that through one story at a time. So we're very grateful to have a special guest on today. Kyle, thank you for joining us out here in the home country of Nashville, Tennessee. We appreciate having Cameron on as well. Cameron, we'll get to you guys here in a little bit and your your connection.
Oh, that's a dirty story.
We've been inching into that little by little, but we're excited to hear kind of how you guys are connected. But
At the hip.
That's right, at the hip. But before we get rolling, we always do this on the front end. If you are struggling out there, if you need some help, you have a couple of resources. You can text the word refuge to 494949. It's a great anonymous line that our listeners can go out to if they're struggling or going through anything. We would be remiss today, as we always do. Our veterans are very close to our heart, and you can utilize the number for the National Suicide Awareness Line as well. At 1-800-273-8255. I got to write these notes down because I haven't memorized those yet, and I should memorize each one of these numbers in my head, but I get put on the spot, and I'm not the brightest guy in the world, so I have to...
The suicide hotline, they've made it a little easier.
A little easier, yeah, 988, which is fantastic. Or you can also use the text at 838-255, but more importantly, I think there are resources out there if you are going through anything, so we really appreciate everybody. But yeah, man, Kyle,
Man, it's good to be
thanks
here.
to have on, man. We've been trying to do this through this guy over here, Cameron, and getting this hooked up. So we appreciate you coming on today.
So there's a story behind that. I'm not allowed to go north of the Mason-Dixon line. So we had to do it down here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Well, we're down here.
Even better.
We love coming down here, man. What a setting to be able to hang out here in the woods and be in an outdoor setting. This is the first time we've ever done this. First time we've ever done a round table as well. So that's the first time for a lot. I don't know if it's the first time for you guys to stare each other in the eyes, but
no, there's
maybe.
been a lot of late, dark nights.
Yeah.
Cold, scared. Wind in my hair, in my eyes, or something.
Long flowing hair.
Good bro time, right? That's called. Yeah.
No, not exactly good, but
yeah, you are awesome, or maybe not awesome, right, Cam? It's not the not awesome.
I've heard that a couple of times.
But Kyle, no, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. I think it's great to have, kind of a wide variety of guests, and I think in your background and what you've done, not only with your books and your leadership and all the various different things that you've done in your career, man, outside of the military. You're a 21-year veteran, which is amazing. So we are very grateful for your service and everything that you've done, man. And
I appreciate it.
It's humbling to sit here and have you here and hang out with us, man. And but it is very important. I know we've talked a little bit about the importance around mental health, and as I said, Building a Refuge is really focuses one story at a time to create hope. Right, and we try to do that in an environment like this where we can all hang out, have some fun, right, laugh a little bit at one another, and really just have open dialogue about kind of how it's impacted different people in life and stories. So we know that you got a pretty amazing story. So we're gonna kick it off. I know you're from South Dakota.
I am.
Give us a little bit, because I know the North Country's good, right?
Well, I was born a long time ago. Yeah, so I left South Dakota to join the military, which was a good call for me because I wasn't really cut out to be a farmer.
Yeah.
I don't think I could work 3 months a year like those guys do. They crush it for that 3 months. I'm joking.
Yeah, all the farmers out there. If my cousin hears this, he might get pissed at me.
No, I'm a big fan of the farmers. They're the original preppers.
Amen.
Because that's what they do. They're the ones that provide for all of us.
Yeah,
so they definitely can provide for their own. So I grew up on a farm, nothing spectacular, small dirt farm. And, man, I wanted to be something I wanted to be a professional bull rider, but then I realized I sucked. So that didn't work out.
Did anybody tell you were not awesome as a bull rider?
Well, the bulls, they did more than tell me that. So then I ended up signing up for the military. My dad's like, why do you want to join the military? I said, I want to learn a trade, And he's like, all right, well, I didn't learn anything other than how to shoot people, I guess. That's the main thing I learned. How to change batteries in a radio or in a flashlight. I guess I did that too. But joined the military back in '86. Got married a couple weeks before I left for the military. And when I went in the Army, started out as a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne as a communications guy. I was in an infantry outfit, but I was a commo guy. So I carried a radio and did all the stuff they did, but I had to carry a radio. Then I decided I would try for Special Forces, so I went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection, made that. That was in the late 80s, early 90s, and I went to Special Forces course, finished that. I was in Arabic language school when Desert Storm kicked off, so I went straight over there for that. Our son was born. Daughter was born a couple years prior, then our son was born. I headed off, so I didn't see him really for the first 6 months of his life. Did that, come back. Was in 5th Special Forces Group for that whole foray into the desert. And then when I came back from there, I tried out for our Special Mission Unit and went there in the fall of '91 and didn't look back, I guess, for the rest of my time. I did have 1 year I went to 1st Special Forces Group, but the rest of the time I was in the unit. So I did that. Right on. There, deployed for different missions overseas. Black Hawk Down was probably one of the most famous ones that I was on. I did 5 tours for the current war in Iraq, or the global war on terror. Sure. And did stuff in Bosnia and some other places. A lot of deployments where we ended up not really doing anything, but you don't know until you do or don't do anything if it's going to happen. So there's some interesting deployments to Panama for a thing going on in Lima, Peru. There was a lot of other deployments that we were on. So my whole adult life, I guess, I was in the military and hung around with the best. I would say the best and the brightest, but I'd say probably the best and the toughest. Yeah. Because some of us military guys, we're not the brightest, but everybody has the same mission focus, And we talked about that too. That's we'll get into that later. But that's what I did. Then I retired, and I haven't looked back since I got out. I looked back for the first year, and then I realized that you can't see your future unless you turn your back on the past. Yeah.
And Kyle, we've had a couple veterans on the podcast in the past, and one of the main things they talked about when they first got out, how difficult it was for them. Did you have the same experience?
Yeah, I had a difficult experience. I would say it's all self-induced. Yeah. As all mental, well, maybe not all mental health is self-induced, but a lot of it, we bring it on ourselves. Yeah. And I think the reason for that for me was the loss of the mission, and then the loss of the camaraderie with those folks that all have the same mission. So for that first year, it was pretty difficult. Well, then what I realized at the end of that year was that I needed a mission, and that's what helped me. I had a mission of conducting classes, running Viking tactics, developing products, working with guys like Cameron. When did we meet, Cameron?
I think the first time we met was 2006, somewhere in that range. I think I can't remember what year you retired.
I got out in 2007, so we met even before I got out. So guys like Cameron, that's what helped me get through this. Is I looked at him and said, if that douchebag can do it, I know I can do it. No,
there it is. I love it right there. Let's go, Cameron.
There's number one. I'll keep score on this side.
That's right. That's awesome. One for Kyle.
No, Cameron and I are, if people haven't gathered that yet, we are very good friends. Yeah. And we immediately, when we met, we gravitated towards each other because we just, one, we don't take ourselves super serious. We like to have a lot of fun.
I'm surprised.
And the other thing about Cameron is, he wouldn't say this, but I'll say this. He's a very switched on dude. So when you're very switched on and you don't have to think through problems as long as other people do, we get to have fun. Yeah. Because when I hear a problem, I can solve that problem in my brain pretty quick, just like Cameron. And then we just go on and do what we got to do. While other people are like, well, wait a minute. What about? We're like, no, dude, let's go. We have a plan. Yeah. Let's go execute. So guys like Cameron, and not just him, but a lot of these law enforcement officers around the country.
Yep.
His wife, I mean, I've become friends with his wife. I mean, she's another switched on cat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she hates me, but
Not all the time.
not all the time. But no, so folks like that have helped me because they see the struggles that we have, and by we I mean folks that have retired from that, and they see the struggles that we have when we're not retired, and they've been there to help folks along the way. But I could see what they had going on, and I realized that there was a mission that I still need to be part of, which is training law enforcement and up and coming military people for whatever fight they end up getting in, whether that fight is on the battlefield, which could be in Fishers, Indiana, or it could be on the battlefield in Iraq, or it could be on the battlefield, which is at your house. Like what are the struggles that you're going through? And I think that's here in the last few years, I'd say in the last probably 7-8 years, I've kind of changed my focus to what it was to where I'm at now. And I try to talk about faith. I talk about some of these other hard to talk about issues that I'm way more comfortable talking about now than when we first met. I wasn't going to bring any of that up, but now that I've been out and about a little bit more, I do talk with guys about that.
Well, I think it's important. I mean, that's one of the things that we do here on Building a Refuge. I mean, we're not going to throw it in anybody's face, right? But we talked about this even when we met like a month ago. Having a relationship with Christ and having that faith foundation, man, to me, I mean, it's one of the big things that's helped me through my own struggles that I've had in my past, is finding that relationship with Christ. Because you always know, man, and you can relate to this from a military or from a law enforcement background, right? Man, you got somebody on your six at all times, right? Now, I know it's more spiritual based, right? And some people might be like, oh, well, what does that really mean? And I think in today's world, we can give some examples, right?
Here... Look around us.
Yeah.
Okay, we didn't make this.
Right.
This isn't evolution.
Right.
God made this. So God's around us all the time. You look
birds, you can hear the birds.
The birds. I was reading a thing yesterday about I think is it glucose that your liver puts out into your system or something like that. So we're a finely tuned instrument of death.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if we didn't have a liver that put I think it's a tablespoon of glucose, and you people out there that are medics, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but just bear with me. The point is, God made us so that we put a tablespoon or teaspoon of glucose in your system at one time. If you have a tablespoon and a half, you're diabetic.
Yeah.
So you see what I mean? That's not something, we didn't make that, you know?
Right.
That's one thing. And then the other thing is, even a program like AA.
Yeah.
What's one of their first orders of business? There's somebody greater than you.
That's right. Serenity prayer. Yep.
Right there. I mean, we all need that. So
grant me the courage to get through this day.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, it's awesome.
Going back to meeting Kyle, and that, that the spiritual part of your life wasn't part of the presentation overtly, but it came through in the messaging that you had. And that's one of the things that kind of attracted me and the guys like me to, Kyle. Is one of the things he talks about with groups is not just concentrate on the leadership of a unit or, a team, but of your house. And the fact that when we listened to him, and I remember the first time I listened to Kyle, really the only thing I got out of that was this guy loved and respected his wife and valued his family and realized the importance of foundational truth. And those are things that just came through with the presentation. And as someone, as a decision maker for, influencing a group of people, it's like, I want that influence on myself and on the guys around me. And it just came through that. So
Cameron, I want to do this too, because I know we're grateful to have you on here, man. But you talked a little bit about your all's connection a little bit ago, but I don't want to miss out also. I mean, you are a longtime law enforcement officer, right? So how long did you spend in law enforcement?
Well, if you discount the last 3 years, as my
your landing period, right? Yeah.
So my family likes to poke at that, but like law enforcement in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
30 years.
Yeah. And I mean, I know because I've known you and I've had family members that actually were employed by the same PD.
Or arrested by him.
I'm trying to think if I've had anybody. I don't know. I haven't been, which is great now. But I mean, I think it's important because I think you just mentioned something, a little bit ago when you guys met, there was a connection there, and you've learned a great deal through Cameron and his experiences and his family and things like that. And I think that all plays into, what we're trying to accomplish here. I mean, I know we kind of jump around a little bit, but I think that's kind of the organicness of this podcast, right? Is that we want to be real. We want to be authentic. We want to be able to just, come in here, have a structured program, but also be able to kind of talk openly about the real world. I mean, because it's real world shit, right?
And I think what the change I've made since Cameron took that class from me is now when I do a presentation, I have two priorities when I do that presentation. One is I want them to know that I'm a Christian.
Right.
And the second thing I want them to know is that I don't drink. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have to drink. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of our guys and gals that are struggling with that.
Yeah.
So if you already have mental health issues, drinking is not going to help that at all. There's no way that taking a depressant is going to help that. It's only going to send you in a deeper, darker place.
Right.
That doesn't mean I'm holier than thou. That doesn't mean any of that. That just means that young person in that crowd can then look at me and say, wait a minute, look at that guy's resume, and he's willing to not drink. Why am I succumbing to peer pressure and drinking?
Yeah.
We just had Veterans Day.
Yep.
Veterans Day is not easy for most of us veterans, because if you take my cell phone and you were to pull it out right now, there's 100 people on there that are no longer with us.
Sure.
And I don't take their names. I remember one time I started to delete a name and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to do that, because I want to, on Veterans Day, I'm going to go through that list, and I'm going to, and to me, it's not just the veterans of the military and were they killed in combat. It's how to, some of them just passed away from cancer or whatever.
Sure.
Some took their own lives. Some lost their lives in combat. And then there's the law enforcement side of that as well. And then there's some that are just friends. I think about them as well. Where was I going with that? Oh, but the second thing is, on this specific Veterans Day, I was on a group chat with a whole bunch of my former mates. Mm-hmm. And it was cheers and pictures of alcohol and look at how many bottles of whiskey I got and all this. And I was like, you're 45 years old and you're still wearing your Letterman's jacket.
Yeah.
And I didn't come up with that. My buddy Nathan came up with that. He said the Letterman jacket thing really sunk in. Like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. That's the point I try to get across to people.
I get it.
And if I can get that across to them, when they come up and talk to me onto the side, it's not about, hey, what holster you're wearing.
Right.
Or what gun is that? I mean, I have those conversations too, but it's like, hey, you're in God's army. I am too. Or, hey, what's this God thing about? Or whatever it might be. And then, how do you not drink? And I'm like, well, it's pretty simple. I mean, I drink water. I drink lemonade or iced tea or Arnold Palmer if I'm feeling special there. And milk. I like milk.
Yeah, it's because you're from South Dakota. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Good farm guy, man. Love milk.
I don't know. I feel better too. That's the other thing. Yeah. Physically, when we first met, I still drank. I was never a heavy drinker, but I realized that if I drank after being dehydrated on the range all day, I'm going to have a headache the next day if I drank one beer.
Yeah.
So why am I doing that? Right. I don't drink at my house. I've never drank at my house. So why would I do it?
It's out socially or whatever.
So it was dumb. So my wife and we had that conversation, and it finally sunk in, like, why am I doing this? You know? So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. And it allows me to have the conversation too of one of the things I used to wonder is like, well, is that guy a Christian or not?
Yeah.
Well, now there's no doubt, because I'm going to tell them. And if they're a Christian, we're going to have that connection. And then we know who's on our side and we can help them out. And then we also know who might be struggling because they're not on our side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
So-
it's interesting, with faith, right? I mean, I'm 100% transparent. I grew up in Wisconsin, grew up around the Lutheran faith. It was a great experience. I would never tell anybody that it was a bad experience, right? It was just different than what my relationship looks like today with Christ.
Yeah.
And I think when, we have those conversations with either guests that come on, or Erik, when you and I or any of the folks that are kind of a part of Building a Refuge have an opportunity to talk to somebody that maybe is going through a challenging time, I don't think we're intimidated by asking, where they're at with it. I think that way But I also think, like, when you share with them, hey, you have freedom in Christ, like, you really have freedom, that's a real challenge, because there's a lot of people out there. I know even many that I've had talks with, that's a big holy crap, man, I can't be free. There's got to always be some laws and rules and kind of ties to it, right?
Yeah, and even so, well, you guys know biblical history better than me, but before Jesus died, that's how Christianity was.
That's right.
It was laws.
All law.
It was all laws, and then Jesus was killed, murdered, crucified, however you want to look at it, and it had to happen, and that took all that away.
One time. Yeah,
it's
one
done.
time.
We don't have to do that. So that being said, you brought up an interesting point. So you said what church you grew up in. I grew up in the Congregational church.
Okay.
Which is different than Lutheran, but
Yep.
it's if you went and sat in a service, you wouldn't know the difference. But it's whatever. I get a lot of questions now from local people like, "Oh, what church do you go to?" And I always feel kind of bad because I'm like, "Well, I'm in church right now."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So don't feel like, for the people out there, don't think you got to go sit in a pew every Sunday.
That's right.
If you want to do that, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But where I can talk to people is not in church, because there's people there already doing that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the range, and Cameron and I are going to become friends, and we're going to have better conversations than I'd ever have at the church.
Hell yeah. That's as much church as any. That, to me, that's more church than going to a box.
Well, that fits in perfectly with what we do on our monthly meetings.
Yeah.
We sit at Harley Davidson once a month. And
Of where? Harley Davidson of where?
Of Indianapolis.
Indianapolis,
Yeah,
that's
located
right.
in Fishers, Indiana.
A little plug for those guys. They're great to us.
But no, it's interesting because when you were talking earlier, you mentioned your mission now. And I know you've got a lot of things going on that you're doing in your life right now. But you talked about the importance of finding your mission, and whether you call it your mission, your purpose, however you want to title it. Talk a little bit about that as far as what that means to you.
So to me, having a mission, I'm a military guy, so I think pretty simply. So having a mission to me means there's something I want to accomplish, right?
Yep.
So we have a mission.
Yep.
What is that mission? Well, my mission is I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father. I've got 2 grandkids, so I really am trying to be a good grandpa. Okay, that's part of that mission.
Yep.
Another part of that mission is I started forging, so I'm making knives and tomahawks and crazy stuff. Well, that's a mission too. Like, have something that you get up in the morning and that's what you got to do. It could be, I'm going fishing.
Yeah.
That's a mission,
right?
Because you have to prepare before you go fishing. You got to do something,
right?
I don't care what it is. Have a mission so that you don't sit there and feel sorry for yourself, because I can tell you that doesn't do anything good for any of us. The other thing is, if I sit there and if I have idle time, I get in trouble, because my brain goes to a different place. My hands go to a different place. Idle time is going to get me in trouble. And that's just the way it is. So I've got to keep myself busy. So that's one thing. The other thing that I think really helps, and I've got a buddy named Tim Sellers, who's just an awesome dude. And did you ever meet Tim?
I don't think so.
He's a lumberjack up there in North Carolina, so he goes out and does, picks out trees that they're going to murder, and does that whole thing. But he's a great guy, good Christian. He's a hardworking dude, great shooter.
Yeah.
And he would send me these texts, and they said, "Hey man, thinking about you. Don't need anything. I'm cheering from the sidelines."
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
Right.
So what I've tried to do is I try to think, how can I help other people? If it's a little text like that, it doesn't cost you anything.
That's right.
All it costs you is about 10 seconds to send it or whatever.
Yep.
That's going to make somebody else feel better. The other thing is you can just go out and help somebody. You don't have to know them to go out and help them. And if you help somebody, it's going to fill your cup up.
Yeah.
And maybe people think that sounds goofy, but I'm telling you, if you're struggling, go help somebody else.
That's right.
And it's going to help you with your struggle, because you're going to realize that, I mean, oh, woe is me, my bag of gold is too heavy. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's people that really have struggles out in America or around the globe. We do some work with Free Burma Rangers. They're friends of ours, and we try to help them a little bit, not just monetarily, but with other needs that they might have. And there's people in Burma, Myanmar is what, you know, they call it on TV, but it's Burma, and these little kids are getting shelled.
Yeah.
And they're burning their schools down and burning their churches down and doing all this stuff. Free Burma Rangers go in there and they try to provide them with food, clothing, shelter, medical aid. Oh, and then at the end, if they want, they'll also give them the good news.
Yeah.
And they do a good news program, not just for the kids, but for the whole family.
Yeah.
Man, can you imagine? Like, think right now, we're sitting out here in this great spot.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, the government came and bombed this building or started on fire, and we had to run in the woods and live for 2 weeks. That's what those people are doing all the time. We just take this for granted.
Yeah.
And we got troubles. I mean, come on, man. They got troubles, and they're some of the happiest people
I know
on the planet. So I think, you know, they have a mission, which is to raise their children. And they're focused on that, because just raising their child out in the woods like that, that is a full-time job.
Sure it is. Yeah.
And we don't have that. We go to Walmart. I don't go to Target anymore.
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. Chick-fil-A or whatever. But you can go buy stuff, and we don't struggle, you know. So
yeah, I think that, you know, I mean, my wife and I have had some friends that were from Bosnia, and they went through that experience, right? And I told somebody one time a story. I was like, can you imagine, like, living in Indiana, right? If Ohio really didn't like you, right? And Michigan, they really, really didn't like you. And Kentucky they freaking hated you. In Illinois, you had no business. I mean, in those
Illinois, they don't have any guns.
And they have, right. But I mean, you just getting run out of something. Like we were just so humbled to hear some of these stories, right? Because, you know, I've grown up in the United States my entire life, lived very free.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't take it for granted by any means.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the big reasons why we do this. Why, you said earlier, why you try to go help somebody else, you know, and when you realize, like, when you're on missions like this, the mission that we, you know, are undergoing right now, I mean, it's not about us. It takes a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of people. And we're grateful for all that. But we do know, and we have seen the benefits of it even so far, you know.
Yeah. And those poor people that, you know, do you know how they became Orthodox Christians and Muslims? You know how that happened? There was a river, and they said, if you're on this side of the river, you're Orthodox Christian. If you're on that side of the river, you're Muslim.
Yeah.
And it's not, and they're not, it's different. But the Croats or the Croatians, the Serbs,
and the
Bosnians,
yeah.
Those three, they have a hatred because of the past. I mean, there's,
like,
because we can go back to, so we don't have to go that very, very far back. We go back to World War II.
Right.
The Croatians were with Hitler.
Yeah.
So the Serbians were with us. Then all of a sudden we picked the Croatians in the next war, or the next, you know, when that all started. So they feel kind of bad with us, because when you talk to Serbians, they're like us. The Croatians, they're kind of like us too. But it's a very interesting dynamic. And then the Bosnians are a whole nother ball of wax there to deal with. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, it would be crazy if, although I wouldn't mind if Tennessee got in a skirmish with Illinois. Just for old time's sake.
Just for something fun to do? Yeah,
I didn't realize when I joined the military that I was a Southerner. I mean, South Dakota, I knew that's Southern Dakota, but I got down south and I realized, man, I really like the South.
Yeah, you can tie to it,
No, I love the South.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the South. And it's funny when you read a book about the North and the South, and the Confederates and the War of Northern Aggression.
Yeah.
And I sympathize with the South, and my
Sure.
favorite, you know, some of my favorite commanders were Southern commanders, and it's not the whole slavery thing. That's what that was about, but
Sure.
it's crazy that happened in our country.
Yeah, I know, right?
I don't want that to happen again the way it did over slavery,
Yeah.
but maybe we could do it about something else this time.
It's a funny point. I was out in Richmond, Virginia, doing some work, and I was eating at a restaurant, little hometown restaurant or whatever, and I had told one of the waitresses that came up to me, I was like, man, I really, traveling out here on the East Coast, man, it's really pretty out here. And she said, son, you are in the South. Don't forget that. And I was like, wait a minute, but Richmond, Virginia, it's an hour and a half maybe from DC. And it's like, when you think about though, like in our own country, how the lines are so kind of formed, I guess, as it relates to that. I mean, obviously coming from Wisconsin, I'm a Yankee. I mean, it's just what I get called.
You, my friend, are correct on that one. Yeah. I did ask one of my buddies, I said, well, I mean, I've been living down here my whole life. Am I not a Southerner now? He's like, no. And I'm like, dude, you're going to want me when the war starts.
Yeah.
He's like, well, that's fine, but you're not a Southerner. And it bothers me because like now I'm like a dude without a home. You know what I mean? Like,
You want to be a
Because you
Southerner.
love it. You can tie to it.
Yeah, I mean, I eat chess pie and I eat grits.
Yeah.
I don't put sugar in grits.
Right.
I mean,
so
I'm
you like sweet potatoes? I mean, who
I
doesn't?
like sweet potatoes and I mean, I don't know.
Man.
You got all the boxes are checked.
Yeah, I mean,
What is it? You weren't born here? Is that the idea?
if you're not born here, you're
Yeah.
not really a Southerner. And
You're not either.
No, I'm not. I spent some time in the South, but no.
yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a funny. I don't know how we
Yeah.
got on that subject, but it's
Yeah.
an interesting deal. So
But you talked about perspective, right? And the different places that you've traveled.
Yeah.
Talk about a little bit about that, like some of the places you were stationed, and maybe some of the perspective you got as far as living, and if that still holds true to for you today.
So going into, I talked about learning to speak Arabic. So most of the Arab countries believe in Islam, and hopefully this isn't too long of a story, but I'm not a big fan of Islam, and I would say now my mind has changed slightly, and I'll get into that in a minute here, but. I go to the first real place I went was Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So I'm a fresh special forces guy. I think I can speak Arabic. I learned colloquial Egyptian Arabic versus modern standards. So I had to change all the words once I got into Saudi Arabia. But I saw how those people were treated. And one thing I really saw was how the women were treated.
Yeah.
And it's not good. It's not good if you're a female, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. So here I am, this kid from South Dakota. I mean, I'm being exposed to that. And what I would say is I would challenge everybody out there, if you haven't left America and went out to a non-standard country, go to one of those countries and see what it's like. Go to Nicaragua, or go to someplace that's a little rough around the edges. Go to Bosnia.
Yeah.
Go to Slovenia or someplace like that. And if you really want to step back in time, go to the Middle East. And you can go to Israel and you can see what's been done there. And then you can go to the other side and see how things are done there. Do you know how you say Palestinian in Arabic?
No.
Philistine.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. That's very interesting.
And that's something I just started doing Arabic to brush up on my Arabic again.
Yeah.
That's another story. But I heard that and I'm like, Philistine. That's like, there was this Philistine named Goliath.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
takes you
saying?
back, right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's this battle goes back many years.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm gonna go a little different direction there.
Yeah.
But that made me aware, one of my surroundings. You can't go into a country like Iraq and act like we do here.
Sure.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
Maybe Iraq you get away with it, but Saudi you can't get away with it because they'll kill you. I mean, there's a good way to die there would be for a woman to act like she's in America. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm up in New Hampshire doing a class at SIG Academy. And I got this really big guy in the class, and he's His skin is not white. He's got a pretty good tan, and he's big. I mean, he is big, like big, strong dude. His fingers are like, I mean, they're I don't know, they're about as big as my wrist.
In Wisconsin, we call those bratwurst fingers.
Yeah. Well, he had that for sure. And I'm like, is this guy Mexican? Or I couldn't tell what he was. And then I heard him. He was over there loading ammo with the guys, and he goes, "Yeah, I grew up in Egypt." And I'm like, "Guy grew up in Egypt." Inta min Masr, which is I'm from Egypt, right?
Okay.
Or you're from Egypt. And I'm thinking, man, I learned to speak colloquial Egyptian Arabic, and I'm about to lay some Arabic on my bro. And I got to think now, what am I going to say? Because I haven't spoke Arabic for a while.
Yeah.
I need to think of something to say to this guy. And I let him finish loading, and we shot for 15, 20 minutes, and they went back to loading again. I'm like, okay, and I was rehearsing it in my head what I was going to say. And I walk over and I speak colloquial Egyptian Arabic to the Egyptian.
Okay.
And he turns and he smiles, and everybody else looks at me like, what did you just say? And he's like, you just spoke Egyptian Arabic. And I'm like, roger that, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, man, and we have this conversation, and I'm trying to speak Arabic, and he's just answering me in English, because it's weird, you know, it's just a weird thing. So this guy's name is Sharif, and he's Muslim. And like I said, I grew to not like Muslims because of where I deployed. Every time that people were shooting at us, they were Muslims. No matter the color of their skin or where they came from, they were Muslim.
Yep.
So now I've got this dilemma going on. Like, I really like this guy. He's a good dude. But he's Muslim. Well, then I flash back to my buddy from Free Burma Rangers, old Dave Eubank. He's like, you know, we're Christians. And in Christianity, there's this one thing that we're supposed to do, and that is you're supposed to love everybody.
Yep.
It's like, come on, God. This bro is Muslim. Do you not see that? Like, he's Muslim. And I'm like, I'm gonna treat this guy like I would want to be treated.
Yeah.
And we have become extremely close friends.
That's fantastic.
And what he has done for me is he's taken away the hatred that I have for another religion.
Huge.
We shouldn't have that. None of us as Christians shouldn't. If they want to hate us, that can be a one-way street. We can love them if that's the one-way street. But I'm going to tell you right now, that dude's Muslim and he loves me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you get into the Muslim faith, you realize pretty quickly that we have a lot of similarities.
Sure.
Because Muslims believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, they don't believe in the Trinity.
Right.
Okay, so, and I'm not saying I'm going to become Muslim. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're a Christian, don't hate other people just because of the color of their skin or where they're from or whatever. And you're growing up in Wisconsin. I'm going to tell you what, people up in our neck of the woods were racist because there was none of the other people there.
Yeah.
There's no blacks. There's hardly any Mexicans. There's a few Asians. Yeah. But they're
and if anybody came in from the outside, it was very protective.
Yeah, you know, and I'm
what I
wondering,
mean?
do you, I've always wanted to ask another Midwesterner this. I guess you're Midwestern.
Oh, yeah.
Would you call that Midwestern?
Yeah. Upper Midwest.
Yeah.
The ritzy part of Midwest.
There it is.
There's the racism I'm talking about right there.
I mean, let's just be real.
So, do you think that people in the Midwest act that way because of their lineage? Because most of us up there are Scandinavian or German.
Yep. Or Danish.
Danish, Scandinavian. Yeah. So do you think it's because of that or is there something else? Because I honestly believe it's because they're Germans and Scandinavians or Scandinavians. That's what my dad used to say, because that's how people are in Scandinavia and that's how people are in Germany.
Yeah. Here's what I think. I think because like the town I grew up in, right, I said it's 700 people, right? I would say 95% of all the people that live in that town today have a Norwegian 2 generations back that immigrated in from Norway, right? And from what I understand, it's interesting. My dad still speaks the old dialect Norwegian. He didn't learn to speak English until he was 8 years old. My dad, right? And so if you think about that in the big picture of things, my grandparents were 99% spoke Norwegian around the community. And when I say around the community, so if you think of the La Crosse area where I was from, and I mentioned Coon Valley, there's probably about, I'd say, a good 100-mile radius around that area where that's very prominent. I think, anyways, you know, when they immigrated over here, they immigrated in small pods.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when they established these small communities, they were protective. Right? I mean, one, they were going to protect the land that they got. And secondly, they were going to say, hey, look, we don't want any outsiders in. And up that far north, there just wasn't a lot of diversity, man. I mean, there just wasn't.
There's still not.
Now, what I'll tell you this, though, it's interesting because to your point, and I think this is where this is in your heart when you mentioned going over and being in Iraq and so on, see these different places. Like you can see it. Like you see when somebody's not being treated right, and that doesn't feel right. You know, whether it's man, woman, whatever, even your friend Sharif, man, you're like, I learned to love this guy, right? I've learned. And God does that, in my opinion. I see it much clearer today. The Lord does that. And Lord, you know, I think the Lord gives those opportunities, right? Not as like, haha, check this one out. You know what I mean? But but you have the eyes to see that, right, Kyle? And I think that's what is so important, even in the big picture of things. But back to why that is, you know, just up in that area, I just think a lot of it comes back to family tradition, family heritage, family, you know, lineages. I mean, but they will help anybody. I know they would go out of their way today. Like somebody pulls over and has a flat tire, you'd be the first one to pull over and help them out. Yeah. But now, today, the world's changed, right? And everybody's a little more skeptical about. But as you drive by, I guarantee it. If you're from my area where I grew up, if you drive by and didn't help that person, man, you'd be thinking about it for the next 2 hours. Like, God, I hope that guy's okay. Or, you know what I mean?
I got to tell a couple Sharif stories while we're on the subject.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that once again, this guy's a big dude. He loves that I love my grandkids. Yeah. And I've been shooting a bunch with my grandson, Denver, and he just upgraded to a 22, and he was shooting a 22 AR, and he was just crushing it. He's got very good hand-eye coordination. Yeah. So he can really shoot this gun. So Sharif says, hey, you got, what FFL do you use? And I go, this one or this one. He goes, oh, that one that you told me about in Nashville, something's going to be shipped there next week for Denver. Okay. And I was like, what? And he goes, oh, you'll see. So they call me up and they go, hey, we got a MP5 SD 22, which is not a cheap gun. Yeah. It's here. And I'm like, roger that. I said, I'm not going to be there this week. I'm going to be there next week. And they're like, oh, okay, you're out of town. I go, nope, but my grandson's not here. So my grandson and we drive in there, and he didn't know exactly what was going on. And I said, I'm here to pick up that gun. And I get it. And I go, this is from my buddy Sharif for you. And he's like, this is crazy. Can you imagine if you were like a 9-year-old kid and you have a grandpa like me that is all into guns and killing stuff, and he just loves it, you know? So the plan was, we're going to get this gun and we're going to go eat pizza because he loves pepperoni pizza. So there's a really good pizza joint.
Who doesn't love guns and pizza?
Yeah. So we get the gun, we go over there, and I go, so we're talking while we're eating the pizza, and I'm telling him about Sharif, and Sharif is this guy that grew up in Egypt and blah, blah, blah. And I said, so let's make a video for Sharif. And he goes, Dad, let's just call him. I mean, Dad, Grandpa, let's just call him. And I'm like, okay, this is my grandson saying this. I'm like, roger that. Yeah. So we call Sharif on the phone, and I listened to Sharif talk to my grandson. It was just amazing. Yeah. And he says something about, your grandpa's pretty cool or something like that. He goes, I love you. He goes, I love my grandpa or something like that. And Sharif goes, I do too. Or something, something kind of funny like that. Yeah. But it's crazy how stuff like that happens. So now here's this Muslim guy who is one of my dearest friends now because of what he's done. Sure. To help me through that problem, not because he gave my grandson a gun or none of that stuff. Yeah. So the next part of this story is I make the steel for a knife. I made this San Mai, so it had 3 layers of 1084 and it had 2 layers of nickel, and it just come out beautiful. So I send this steel to my buddy Alan Leischwitz, and he makes a knife out of it, and it's just a gorgeous dagger. It's amazing. So I get this dagger, and the first guy I thought of, I was like, okay, we don't sell these. This is going to go to the Stay in the Fight Foundation, which is our 501c3 that Melinda and I run. It's for not just veterans, but for anybody. Yeah. And I thought of Sharif. I'm like, I'm going to call him, and I'm just going to say, do you want this knife? Because if you do, I took a picture of it, and I said, if you want this, make a donation to Stay in the Fight Foundation, and it's yours, whatever you want to do. I wanted him to have one of these knives. So I call him up and I go, hey man, here's a picture of this knife. And he's like, oh dude, yeah, I got to have that. And he goes, well, how much donation? I said, well, really whatever you want. Yeah. And he goes, but what do you think it's worth? And I said, well, the knife's probably worth, I don't know, $1,000, $1,500 or something like that. And he sends us a check for $2,000 for that knife.
Sure.
But along with that check, he sent a letter. And I didn't know the struggles he was going through and how much he appreciated my friendship. Alan Elischwitz, the guy that made the knife, he's also friends with him, our buddy Cav up at SIG. I had no idea the impact that the three of us were making in his life. Yeah. His shop had burned down. He works for Harvard, but he also has a gun shop on the side. He had his shop burnt down. He debated if we were going to rebuild it. He rebuilt it. I came there and did, which to me, I'm just going to see my buddy. Well, he put it out to everybody. Hey, Kyle Lamb's coming to this thing. And I brought Chili, and I brought Skinner. And you've met Chili. I don't think you've met Skinner.
Yeah, I don't think I met him.
So we're the Three Musketeers. We show up, and he's got all these people there, and we're taking photos, and it was awesome. And I didn't realize how much that meant to him. I just didn't realize. I was just doing it because he's my friend. Yeah. Well, it also helped him business-wise, but man, it like pulled him out of a funk. Yeah. So my point is, of that whole long story, love everybody.
Amen.
That's one thing. And do stuff for other people. If you'll do stuff for other people, you have no idea the impact that you're going to have for that person, on that person, and you have no idea the impact it's going to have on your own heart to change. And I mean, I know I'm beating a dead horse there, but this horse deserves to get beat.
Yeah, I don't think you are. I mean, what we do here, man, I don't think you are at all.
Well, and it's important too, because what lies underneath that without going out and doing those types of things is isolation and loneliness,
self-pity.
And that leads to lots of other things. And then we already talked about coping mechanisms of alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever you want to look at. And I think your perspective is very unique, just because you've been so many places and around the world and been able to bring that back here and not only incorporate it into your own life, but you're doing exactly what our model is, that one story at a time. You're just out there telling your story.
But what a great connection to that. I mean, you asked the question about, your travels and all your places that you've been to, and it led us to that story of Sharif, right?
Absolutely.
And I mean, I think
and
you got to zoom out, right? And you can see that.
Well, there's guys that are like that. Cameron's one of them. He just sends me text, crazy text about send me pictures of when he was a young police officer. And it's
an amazing picture, though. It's such a transformation.
We'll have Clark pop that up.
It is a transformation. Yeah.
But we
that's a great point.
I kind of expect that because we're friends. Or John Cohn, Johnny Dog. Johnny Dog is the guy that really, he pointed out things to me, talking to Howard. Have I told you guys that story?
I don't think so. No.
Go ahead and say what you're going to say.
I was going to say, like, when I listen to you tell those stories, when we talk about our Christian connections and love everybody, that's really the message, for all of us. And obviously we're talking specifically to an audience of men, but to love each other because we're all a lot more alike than we are different.
Right.
We're all from different backgrounds, whether it's the four of us sitting here, the crew, or whoever. Yep. We all have different backgrounds, but we have way more in common than we do, otherwise. And, that Christian message is love your brother, no matter what that background is.
Love your neighbor.
Love your neighbor.
And your neighbors can be dicks.
Right?
Look at even the crew's over here.
Everybody's nodding their head like, yes.
Hey, but he looked at you when I said that, so I don't know what's going on over there.
I remember I was standing next to this young officer, and she was living a different lifestyle, than what I would have personally wanted for her, but we were actually between two churches. There was one that was built that we were actually directing traffic for an event at a church, and she looked over and she asked me what the building across the street was going to be. And so that's They're building a new church there. And she had a really negative reaction to hearing that was going on. And I said, and she went on to say something about the Bible being a fairy tale. And I said, well, that's, your opinion, you're entitled to that. And she goes, well, I didn't mean to offend you. You didn't offend me. I said, God loves you. It doesn't, God loves you no matter what you say about him. He's there for you. And we just had a really good conversation around that. It opened up more conversations later down the road. And I think that's the message that, your group, Erik and Brandon, what you're trying to tell guys is, hey, look, we're all broken. We're all struggling, but we love you. And we're here for you.
Well, and I think that's what we talk about almost every podcast is there's a decision that someone has to make. If you're in that lonely place, if you're in that dark time, like there has to be a decision, an action step for you to go out and seek that out or to start those conversations. Had you not had that conversation, I mean, probably every bone in your body was telling you not to have that conversation with Sharif because of your background of, your interactions with Muslims.
Yeah.
And I've actually had a very similar interaction with a Muslim friend of mine, and it is enlightening to know that you can differ in your beliefs but still have an open, honest conversation where it doesn't have to come to blows.
And it's not just him; it's it's all of those people. I think that's the important thing is. It doesn't. I'm not just saying Sharif is my only Muslim friend. I'm like Dave Eubanks, and I got to love all these jokers. Even, I mean, just put yourself in this guy's shoes. We're talking about suicide, right? Mm-hmm. What are they doing? They're strapping bombs to their bodies and they're committing suicide. Yeah. Tell me those jokers aren't struggling.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So why would we not love that person? Right. How can we help that person? I mean, I did 3 tours in northern Iraq, Mosul, Iraq, which is close to Nineveh. It's actually part of that. So Nineveh is one of the oldest known civilizations on the planet.
Right.
And when I was up there, I dealt with all the bad people. I never dealt with, we had some good people that helped us out, but predominantly we're dealing with bad people. Just like when you're law enforcement, how can you stay positive as a law enforcement officer when, Cameron or Angela, well, Angela now because you're a quitter, but she's out there every day and she's dealing.
Just going to do a score call here, 2 for Kyle.
That's
at least 2.
Dose. Itneem in Arabic. So where was I going now? You interrupted me.
Actually, he did.
I did.
Oh, so I'm dealing with all the bad people. Then I get a call from the local pastor. I spoke at their church here, and he said, "Hey, we're going to go to. We want to try to help these displaced Christians that are being kicked out by ISIS out of Iraq. Would you help us?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. What do you need me to do?" Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to just fast forward the story. We end up in Amman, Jordan, and we're dealing with Christians that had to escape ISIS out of Mosul, Iraq.
Oh, wow.
So now I'm standing there with these people. I know their town. Yeah. I know their town, mostly the bad parts of town, but I know their town really well. And I'm like, the first thing I'm like, oh, what bridge do you live by? Which way you number them, north to south, south? And they're like, how do you know that? Well, I'm one of the guys that was there, and they're Christians. Yeah. They're Christians that have, now we think we're struggling as Christians in America. Yeah. Holy cow, look what they're dealing with. Yeah. One of the dudes in the crowd, and this blew my mind, we're doing some video stuff to try to raise money to help them out. I'm talking to this dude, and he says something. I'm like, Tanim and Fadlek, which means, say that again. And he goes, he was Saddam's cook.
Wow.
Wait a minute now. Mm-hmm. You're a Christian, and you cook for Saddam. And he goes, well, yeah, because he can't trust Muslims, but he trusted... Think about that.
That's nuts.
That speaks volumes. Saddam Hussein trusted the Christians to cook for him.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's like hard to wrap your head around.
It was insane. That trip was just an amazing trip for me. Yeah. And trying to help them out, and a lot of them, they weren't allowed into our country at the time because we had administration that wouldn't support bringing Christians in.
Yeah.
So all the Muslims got to the front of the line. That's too bad for them. They went to other countries, that would allow them to come.
Yeah,
Some of them in Scandinavia, some of them down south, wherever. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, I
spin
mean,
on
it's just
things.
hard to wrap when you come across stuff like that. I mean, it's got to be just you're like, what? You're like, okay.
It was
Probably
an awesome
I mean,
trip.
you
It
probably
was
had a lot more
amazing.
questions for the guy, right? Just in general, but I mean, trying to
That's
wrap your head around that.
Yeah. Oh, I got all kinds of questions. I'd be like, I know you're Christian, but couldn't you have poisoned one? Dude?
Maybe put a little something
Yeah,
in the peanut butter and bananas,
Yeah. Or just play some fun tricks, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, at least that.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's great. I mean, I think when when folks hear these stories, Kyle, I mean, I know I do. We get kind of taken back by because we didn't live that environment, right? And I think that is, one of the things that has drawn a lot of our guests to our show. Is that we get a variety of different stories, from different people, different perspectives. But
Well, we can all do that, though. All
That's
of us
what-
can
yeah.
do that. I know you went overseas, and if you can do something like that, and then I said that earlier, go to another country, because if you go to another country, you'll realize how blessed you are to live in America.
Oh my God, yeah.
Maybe you'll quit having a pity party.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something. This is your podcast.
Yeah,
but
talk away, man.
I have a very short memory, so I want to make sure I say this while I'm thinking about it. One thing we talked about earlier was, so veteran suicide is an issue.
Yes.
Young people in America, suicide is an issue. I don't like to separate the two because they go hand in hand. It's the same kind of person having the trouble there, whether they served or not.
That's right.
What I feel like is that we have some fakery going on our side in the veteran community, where people are pretending to have issues because if they do that, they get a dog, they get to go on a hunt,
Right.
They get people feeling sorry for them, even if they don't have those mental issues. And if they do, then they need to get help.
That's right.
If they don't have it, let me tell you straight up, you're stealing from our brothers and sisters that need the help.
That's right.
If you don't need the help, don't be that person. I met a guy, he'd been on like 30 veteran hunts. It made me mad because you've been on 30 hunts. Why didn't you go on one and then get your buddy on one and then him get a buddy on one and spread the wealth? Maybe a couple, whatever. But if your lifestyle is you only hunt when people pay for it,
Yeah.
that's just kind of weird.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
like it's just a weird thing.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Do you think that's a defense mechanism in some cases? I mean, in terms of like somebody like, oh, you mentioned this, I think earlier, like, oh, poor me, right? And it's even hard for me to say that, right, when it comes to veterans. But I mean, do you think that's a defense mechanism that they put up to kind of maybe navigate the system or navigate?
I think it's narcissistic and egotistical.
Okay.
And if people hate me because I said that, then you can hate away, because if you're fake, that's going to bother you that I said that.
Amen.
If you're not
Yeah.
fake, it ain't going to bother you one lick.
And that doesn't matter. That's across anything.
I
believe. Yeah.
I don't care. If
Yeah.
you're fake, if you're fat and and this kills me. If you're fat,
Yeah.
and I'm talking really fat, not fat like you
like
and I.
fat, like
Wait a
like
minute, you
real
left me
fat,
out of
like-
that conversation, man. I'm
No, I just
a
don't
good
know.
old. You can call me, man. Just
Hey,
call
Thank
it
you.
what it is.
Thank you, Kyle.
Hey, fatty, I'll get
Yeah,
to you later.
thank you.
So I go with my buddy Johnny Dog, and at the time Ma Cone was still alive, and we drive up to Walmart with them. They can't get a handicap spot, and Ma Cone was paralyzed in half her body.
Okay.
He can't get a handicap spot to get his wife out to take her into that store because there's a couple of obese people that have handicap license plates. That's narcissistic and egotistical, that you think because you're fat, you're better than the person that is truly handicapped.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, I follow you.
And then I see
Yeah, I
other
get it.
dudes. I see a guy like he has no legs and he ain't even parked in the handicap spot. He could do it. He doesn't do it because he's like, I ain't handicapped. I'm
Yeah.
good. I don't have any legs, but what's the big deal?
Yeah.
You know, so I think I think, and I had a come to Jesus meeting with the guy the other day, and he was bringing me in the right direction about, that usually means something's going to blow up in like 10 seconds.
I love it. He's got his eyes on you and me.
Oh, I can watch all you guys.
No matter what you do, don't.
Don't do that.
He's running. He's out of here. I'm like, okay.
So,
I love it.
oh my goodness, I keep losing my train of thought there.
You're talking about the dude who wasn't handicapped.
Yeah.
He didn't see himself as.
So I had come to Jesus meeting with a guy, and we had this talk about what veterans are doing right now of faking the system. Like this one lady said, she works for some 501c3, and she goes, my goal is that every veteran that comes to me, I get him 100% disability. And it's like, no, it should be, I should get them what they deserve.
Yeah.
And then I told him a story about what happened to me that I don't deserve. And I'm one of those guys. So I'm not, when I say this, I'm not saying this like I'm better than you.
No,
I'm saying this like I'm one of you.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling with that because I got upgraded and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I wanted for my eye and you got me for, because I say I go sit with my back to the wall when I go into a restaurant.
Yeah.
Do you do that?
Depends on where I'm at.
Okay, well.
That's just good practice.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of depends on where I am.
Did you serve in the military?
I did not, but
okay,
I'm
so
the door no matter what.
right, so there's a dude
Yeah.
that didn't serve in the military, and he puts his back to the wall. So how is that PTS? It's not.
No.
It's something we do. Is it hypervigilance? I don't care what you call it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's hypervigilance because hypervigilance truly is a problem, but we do that. Your wife does that. My wife does that.
For it's me, it's just a cute
Yeah,
girl
she'll let me
walking
sometimes
into
do
it.
You know what I'm saying? Though, like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When I go into a restaurant, if I walk in with my wife, she goes and sits with her back to the wall. And then when I come back out, she slides around the table and lets me sit with my back to the wall.
Yeah.
Because she knows that she's a stable person. She
Yeah.
won't freak out. If I have my back exposed, I'm not good.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that
yeah.
doesn't mean that I have a problem, does
Right.
it?
No.
I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No.
So anyway,
Well, it's interesting what the subject that you have right now, because we deal with a couple hospitals, mental health facilities in Indianapolis, and I had a meeting one time with one of the directors, and she said, what we love about your organization is that you get people off our waiting list. Because she said probably on average 35 to 40% of the people that come to our facility shouldn't come here.
yeah.
And so if they have another avenue, if they have another way of getting stuff off their shoulders, then that takes them off our wait list, which allows people who really need to get the help to get the help.
Yeah.
And so I think that, there's such a backlog in the VA when we talk to our friend Mike, who's the director of the VA.
That's right.
And that's one of the biggest problems that they have is the backlog.
And the backlog is because there's people that don't need the help that are going and taking it from the people that do, and then we end up with our friends killing themselves.
That's right.
And if we're those people, we're responsible for that.
Yeah.
One thing we talked about when you guys called me a month ago or whenever that was. One of the struggles I had a probably my most important leadership mentor took his own life. And he tried once, was not successful, but then his wife died, I believe, of an overdose, and then he was successful. And that one got me. Then I had another guy that we had sent to Warrior's Heart. We had talked about that a little bit, and he went to Warrior's Heart a couple times, and I was supposed to be his ranger buddy, and we weren't buddies. I was just supposed to be the guy that kind of helped him out, but he wouldn't communicate with me. And or if he did, it was just very short, and it was just, I don't know, not argumentative, but a little defensive, you know what I mean? And I just wanted to, I'm just checking out. That's it. I don't want money. I don't need anything. I'm just wanting to make sure you're all right.
Right.
So he took his life. When that happened, I had been given the responsibility to be his ranger buddy by Tom Spooner, one of the guys that started Warrior's Heart. And man, it was just tearing me up. Like, I failed this guy. I absolutely failed this guy. So fast forward a month later, and I'm talking to my buddy, the righteous Duke Krager. He runs the Misfit Toy Society, and they do kind of what you guys do. They reach out, but they focus more on law enforcement and military to help those folks out that are struggling. And I called him up, or he called me. I forget what happened, but I was like, man, it's just eating away at my brain. Like, this guy killed himself, and he goes, hey man, do you believe you're the great physician? I'm like, no. And he goes, then stop acting like him. And that was the wake up call for me. Was that if somebody does go through with suicide, that's not on us.
Right.
And that's, to me, that's just as important as the suicide prevention, because if you can prevent the suicide, then we never get to that. Then that's awesome.
Yeah.
But if one of our mates commits suicide and now we take that on our shoulders, that's just as bad as what they did. So for people out there listening, if you have lost, whether it's a loved one, and I know you guys have had that hit very close to home, or it's a law enforcement officer or a military person or whoever it is, they've done that. It's that burden shouldn't be on you. Yeah. You should learn from that. Like I learned. I mean, I want to try to save other people from the struggle of, hey, my buddy killed himself and that's my fault. No, it's not your fault. That is not our fault. I mean, it's not.
That's right.
So we got to get past that too, because we're still living. Let's try to take care of the living. We've lost the others. If they're gone, they're gone.
That's right.
I'm not saying forget about them, but don't dwell on that and make it your own thing.
Yeah, it's, I mean, you know, my personal experience with it, with losing my brother, I mean, you know, he was the dude that would sit around this table and laugh and joke and do all the same shit we're doing, right? And, you know, it still takes time. You know what I mean? It still takes time, but I know that it wasn't anything that I've ever done. You know what I mean? Because you can look at it a couple of ways, right? You can be like, well, that's pretty selfish looking if it's just, you know, if it's because of you or somebody else, right? I mean, they have their own thing, and I mean, if you know, he had his
never
own,
ever
I mean,
forget him.
Yeah, no, man.
Him.
I mean,
never forget him. You want to remember, like, that's your brother. He's always going to be your brother.
Let me tell you, just as crazy, because I know we're getting close on time here, and I got to be respectful of your time, right? But so yesterday, I think I told this story when we did one of the guys that helps us here, great guy, Clark, right? He's hanging out over here with LDR Studios.
He's a good looking
fella. He's a pretty good looking fella, man. He's got amazing hair.
Oh, so, he does.
When he was doing his story, which recently dropped, so if you're out there, go check it out. Little things can happen in your life that's a reminder. So we show up in this condo that we're renting right here in Nashville. And these guys bounce off. They're like, hey, we're going to go see a buddy play. They're headed down Nashville, blah, blah, blah. And as they're walking out, my brother's favorite song was one of his favorite, Marshall Tucker, Can't You See? And I'll be damned if on that Hank Williams Jr. record was that song playing. And I'm just like, are you shitting me?
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, but again, it goes back to another thing that you mentioned. I mean, I have the eyes to see it. I have the ears to hear it. I have the eyes to see it. And all of those little things that happen, man, just, they help.
Well,
they're little helpers.
It's because of experience. The experience you've had.
That's exactly right.
We've had. And we don't profess to be a suicide prevention
we're not
organization.
fixers.
We're a quality of life organization because I in my background, you know, there was a scenario there where I was supposed to get into prison ministry, and I never really realized why I didn't feel that tug.
Yeah.
Well, the reason was and what God had told me was, you get to them before they get there.
Yeah.
And so that's really in my heart. When I'm doing what I'm doing, that's my purpose. That's my mission, is to get to them before they land there. And so it's perspective, right? Yeah. And one of those things, you know, that I want to make sure that we talk about are the organizations that you support. Can you tell us a little about the two nonprofits that you have?
The first one is Warrior's Heart, and I really don't support the nonprofit there. And I don't say not support. That's a bad way to say that. I support them. I hope everybody gives them $1 gazillion. But where I step in with Warrior's Heart is I send them customers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of customers in our field. Now, in Warrior's Heart, they only deal with first responders and military. So law enforcement, military and first responders, that's it. So if you're a regular person, you cannot go there. And the reason for that is because when Cameron's sitting there across from another person, it's not some dude off the street that he arrested a week ago. It's another guy or gal that's just like him.
Yeah.
That's why that place works. So that's the first one. If people need help, and I get a lot of calls about this, and I'll just tell you straight up, the way I do it is I say Warrior's Heart, and the number pops up, and you call them any time of the day, and they're going to help you out.
Yeah.
We just went through that with a Nashville SWAT guy. He called me up. He goes, "What do we do?" And I said, "Just call them." He's like, "Dude, they just were awesome." And I go, "Yeah." I said, "Just call them." And they were worried about insurance. And I said, "Don't worry about that. Call them." And there's a solution to every problem.
Yeah.
And as Cameron and I were just going to handle that, just call them and everything will be taken care of.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's free, but I'm saying that it's going to be they will help you get whatever you need to get that loved one, your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife in there and take care of them.
Yeah.
And they do spectacular. It's inpatient treatment, and you're not going to be doing any dancing or watercoloring. You're going to be making stuff out of wood or steel and working with dogs and working with other people just like you are. So it's an amazing place. So a few years ago, my wife had to have kind of emergency back surgery. Something went wrong with her lower back, and they're like, "You got to get in there within a week to have this fixed." So, all right. No big deal. We got this awesome insurance from the military. It takes care of everything, right? Yeah. So the day comes where she's got to check into the hospital, and we go in there, and she gets the funny hat on, and they get her all laid up in there, and they're about to put the IV in, and the nurse comes in and goes, "We're canceling your surgery because your insurance is not approved."
What?
Yeah, and we're like, "Wait a minute." And I go, "My wife cannot stand up right now, and she's in severe pain, and I've never seen her ever say she's got a 10 on a 1 to 10. Like, childbirth was a 1 to her, you know what I mean?" So she's really hurting.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Go down to the truck and get our checkbook." And you got it? And I'm like, "Roger that." So I run down there, and I get the checkbook, and I sit down, and I go, "How much?" $14,000. I wrote a check for $14,000. Now, maybe to some people, 14 grand ain't a lot of money.
Yeah, I got you.
But to me at that time, that was a lot of money. And when I was in the Army, that was money I would have never had.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Then I had to go see another person that's going to give her the juice to put her to sleep there. Anesthesiologist is another $800 or $1,000, something like that. So I write another check. An hour after my wife come out of surgery, she was pain-free and standing up, walking around.
That's right.
Okay, so that's amazing. 2 months later, when she finally recovered from some of the drugs they gave her, she was in a dark place. She come out and she's like, "We need to start a 501c3." And I'm like, "Oh no, here we go." The devil has possessed her or something. I don't know what's going on here, but I don't want anything to do with that, because I've had all these bad experiences with veterans organizations and where they take in a bunch of money. I just found out this one guy I know, he took in $400,000. He paid $300,000 to himself, his wife, and another person for salaries. It's like, that's not what this is about. So I said, "Oh, you want to start a 501c3? I'm thinking this is ridiculous." She goes, "Yeah, here's the thing. What would have we done if we didn't have that money?"
Yeah.
She would have had to take narcotics for how long? And it would have been 6 months before that was approved. That's how long it took for us to get our money back.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, she said, it isn't going to be for veterans. It's going to be for anybody that's a human being. And I'm like, okay, now I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so the money side. She goes, "Yeah, here's how I want it to work. For every dollar that we take in, $1 goes to help people. Not 80 cents, not 90 cents, not 96 cents. 100% goes to help people." Well, how does that happen? Well, I don't get paid. She don't get paid. Any of the admin fees Viking Tactics pays for.
Yep.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's truly a 501c3.
That's right.
So the other thing is, we made it a requirement that you had to have a job. Because if you don't have a job, if you're somebody that's poor, you got a place to go. If you're somebody rich, you got a place to go.
Right.
But if you're a blue collar person, guess what? Like a law enforcement officer that, their kid can't get the right treatment and we can help with that. It's a one-time thing. We pay the bill. We don't give them the money. We pay the bill. Or an SF guy that's struggling with a TBI injury and there's a supplement that they can't get through the military system.
Yeah.
And these actually happen. These are things that actually happen. We had a military guy, they wouldn't give his daughter the helmet that she needed. They were going to do open head surgery to fix her versus just this helmet that cost like $3,000 or $4,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
So we paid for the helmet. It's a one-time thing, and she's perfect. That doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that's better than cracking this little girl's skull open.
Right on. Yeah.
So that's what the Stay in the Fight Foundation is all about. Some people just give, and that's awesome. A lot of people just give.
Yeah.
That surprises me. And another way that you can give is I make these knives and tomahawks. And if you want one, you can't order one because I don't take orders.
That's right.
That's another story I can tell about.
Yeah.
But I make what I want to make, and when I get done with it, if you want it, you can have it.
That's awesome.
But you got to pay us for that knife, and that every bit of that goes to Stay in the Fight
that's
Foundation
great.
there. So I had a guy from his outfit say, "Hey, we want you to make a tomahawk for this guy." And I'm like, "Okay, what do you want me to do?" And I'm like, "Oh crap, I don't really know what I'm doing. Why am I taking this order?" So I take that order, and about 3 days later, he calls me up. He goes, "Yeah, we don't want that. We're not going to do that." I'm like, "Oh, whew, that's good."
You're like, woo.
Well, a week later, he calls me. He goes, "Hey, we decide we want that, so I want to order." And I go, "I don't take orders." He goes, "Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like 10 days ago, I
changed my
I
mind.
said, "Yeah, I don't do that anymore." And the guy was happy with what he got.
Yeah, you got
but-
Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was the first one. This was with Brad.
Oh, Brad's.
Yeah. So, but we got it squared away. It was for Pac.
Pac-Man.
Yeah, Pac-Man got a cool.
He did get that thing's
It's
neat.
the only double-headed hatchet I ever made. But
Yeah,
and
that's
there's
awesome.
a reason because it was a pain in the butt to make. But anyway,
Yeah. It's great stuff.
so that's who we work with. There are other organizations that we have helped. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but I always say what I'm not supposed to say. I'm very selective of who I help now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because before I help them, my wife, who is pretty switched on, she checks out where they actually spend their money.
Yeah.
And if it's 90%, we probably don't help them.
Yeah.
If they're truly helping people, then we are absolutely there to help them. But last year, the amount of money we took in and the amount of money that went out at the end of the year, thanks to God, we're within 10 cents.
That's fantastic.
So
awesome.
Yeah,
that's a God
great,
thing.
That's
man.
good, yeah.
We got
Yeah.
nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
So,
that's beautiful.
so
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been the goal since we've started this, man. I mean, 100% of what we do goes back. You know what I mean? Everything.
Well, we when we first started,
Yeah.
we had a zero budget.
zero.
Anyway.
We had $0, man.
We had people coming out of the woodwork like wanting to help us
Yeah.
and everything, and then things kind of evolved, and we had some costs involved, and
Yeah.
and it's funny how that just shows up.
yeah.
yeah, and what's cool about what you guys are doing is you don't, and I think it's you guys have a better cause than I do. I just do it because I like to talk smack to people. So our podcast has been successful because of that, but because of what you're doing, people keep tuning in because it's when you listen to these people, you're like, that's exactly what was going through my head.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we're the same person. We're just in,
That's right.
in different
exactly right.
lifestyles, different areas of the world, but man, it always it reaches out and rips you by the heart, you know.
That's exactly
and that's
right.
what's important. We had a scare 6 months ago. All of a sudden, we were going to take our podcast and start getting all these sponsors and everything, and we're like, yeah, this is going to be great. And then we got cold feet. We're like, well, we want to do what we want to do. We want to make sure the message is what I want to say.
That's
and
right.
if somebody else is going to give me the message I got to say,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
past
yeah.
that.
Not
It goes
okay?
back to being fake, man.
Yeah, I'll do that
yeah.
when I'm out there trying to promote a product. I can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But here I'm trying to just talk to people I want to talk to, and that's
Yeah,
it. You know.
yeah.
So Johnny Dog Cohn told me when he was struggling with his wife having the stroke. I said, John, I don't know how you do it. And he goes, well, sometimes I got to talk to Howard. And I'm like, Howard? And he goes, don't you read the Bible, boy? And I'm like, I read the Bible, but he goes, it says right in there, Howard be thy name. So when he said that, though, it spoke to me, because going back to the rules that you have to follow, you don't have to follow any rules.
Right.
Your sins are forgiven already. You just have to step up to the plate and admit that. But the second thing is, I can talk to Howard.
That's right.
And you can talk to Howard.
I can talk to Howard. I'll never forget that now from here.
Well, and
on
that's,
out.
to me, that's,
Yeah,
you know,
I love it.
John Cohn is.
So thank you for John.
Yeah,
John
Dog is an interesting guy. Angela is one of his most favorite people on the planet, right along with my wife Melinda. And he loves to take care of the gals when they come to visit. He wants to take care of them. And my wife and Angela, they've both been out there to John's place, and he's a trip. He is an absolute trip. But when he said that made me think, like, if you're struggling, no matter where you at, you don't have to make a phone call. You can talk to Howard.
Yeah.
And it sounds goofy, but it's
you can.
true. It's true.
Man. You can, absolutely.
He told me, he said he woke up one day, had a dream that his wife had died. And I'm like, John, that's terrible. He goes, yeah, but she went to heaven. And I go, he goes, you got to hear the rest of the story. She goes up to the pearly gates, walks up the pearly gates, and St. Peter's like, Janine, you've almost made it. But before you can come through the gates, you have to spell the word love. And Janine goes, Love. And they opened up the gates, and she made it in. And I was like, well, John, that's a great dream. He goes, oh, it ain't over. He goes, later in that dream, I got run over by a truck. And he goes, you ain't gonna believe it, but I was going to heaven too. And I'm like, well, what happened? He goes, well, I go to walk up to the pearly gates, and St. Peter wasn't there. He was on chow break. And he goes, you ain't gonna believe who was pulling security up there. And I'm like, who? And he goes, Janine, she was pulling security. So I said, well, what happened? He goes, well, I walked up to the pearly gates, and I'm like, honey, I made it. And she goes, almost. Spell eucalyptus.
That's awesome.
Fantastic, man. That's
So, talk to Howard. And he had two things he told. Well, he told me that, but he told my son another thing too. He said, sometimes he just has to stare at a rock. He'd get so upset because he's trying to deal with his wife, and he's like, God, why did you do this to me? Why do I have to take care of her? And why I got to feed her, I got to bathe her, I got to do all this stuff. Why, you know? And that's what we always do. Why me?
Yeah.
Well, what a lucky person, because he is the inspiration for all of us men to look at him and to say, if something ever happens to my wife, I hope that I can do half what he did.
Yeah, that is a strong dude.
Oh my goodness. Unbelievable. But he told my son, he goes, well, Lucas, sometimes you just got to stare at a rock. And he's not making that up. He would go outside, get his act together, and he would stare at a rock, maybe talk to Howard.
Yep.
And he'd get back in there and get back in the fight, and he would do it. And he's just an unbelievable guy.
Yeah.
And he's not a pretty fella. He's not a proper fella. He's not he's a redneck like the rest of us. He is as a wild a dude as you can find.
Yeah.
But he's an awesome human being, you know? So
That's cool.
Good man.
Well, Kyle, we can't thank you enough, brother.
Yeah,
man, this has been,
thanks, man. This has
a
been
real treat. I mean, it's
Long time
great to
coming.
hear, your stories, and I think all of the successes that you've had post-military. I think everything that you've done in it, thank you very much for everything you've done for us to sit back here and enjoy the free world that we live in. We just really appreciate it. And
Cameron got me into this again.
Yeah,
I'm sitting there going, I'm only 2 down.
Yeah, you got to
That's
figure
a
it out.
win.
You got to figure out.
Are we going to get a good cam story?
Oh, that's a win for me.
So no, I can't tell that. I got
Angela is around here somewhere.
You're going to let him off the hook, huh?
The Blue Hornet over here.
Hornets.
You want to? So I tell him how you got that name.
Yeah.
So Blue Hornet. So there is a guy. Who's the dude that sings that always wears the blue glasses?
Oh,
it
from
Bono?
U2?
Bono.
Yeah.
So I show up at this training, and there's this douchebag cop over there trying to imitate Bono. He's got blue. I'm not making this up. He's got blue glasses on, and I'm like,
What's up, Blue Hornet?
Yeah. So I'm like,
Blue safety glasses.
Yeah. Blue Hornet.
you're Bono.
I gave him that name. Bravo Hotel.
douchebag cop
If you're
over there.
Bono, blue glasses.
I'm just glad it wasn't douchebag because that's what he's gonna. That's gonna be my nickname forever once he gives it to me. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we
that's
got some guys
fantastic.
that got nicknames from me that have stuck. So
It's good. Nicknames are good. That's another thing about the North, man. North, everybody's got a nickname up there. I don't know what it is. I mean, at least everywhere I grew up, man, everybody's got a nickname.
Well, Cam, that name will spread now.
Yeah, Blue Hornet.
For sure.
Yeah, Blue Hornet. Hopefully.
when I was a kid,
That's douchebag.
as you can tell, I've got squinty eyes.
So, yeah.
You probably never noticed.
Never.
But so there's no Asians in the town I grew up in.
Okay.
So my call sign became Chink. They called me Chink when I was a little kid, and I'm like, now I look at that, and I'm like, that's an awesome
Yeah,
call sign.
heck yeah,
So
it
then
is.
they wanted me to play basketball. And I was not a basketball player, but I would go and run all the practices with them to get in shape for track and football and everything. And I played baseball as well. Well, one day they're like, well, you got to play in the game. You're coming to practice. So I'm sitting down there talking to the cheerleaders, not because I'm hitting on them, because I'm related to all of them. And they call me, they're like, hey, Lamb. And I'm like,
Yeah.
because there's other lambs on the team. They're like, get down here. So I go down there, like, you're going in for so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, what do I do?
Yeah.
Well, they're going to buzz you in. So they buzz me in and somebody comes off and I go on. I'm like, man, I'm out on the floor. What's going to happen now?
Yeah.
Well, I get the ball and I go running down the court. It's not pretty. And I do a layup and I miss. But I get my own rebound and I go to shoot again. And my own teammate blocks me. So my new call sign became Wrong Way.
Oh, you went the wrong way.
I went the wrong way.
Oh, it's awesome.
You're the master of the obvious there. See how he got that?
Well done, Eric. Well
That's why
done.
he's here.
That's
Then
right.
a movie came out called Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And then I became the dude. And I'm like, I'm going to embrace the dude because
Yeah.
it's better
Yeah,
than
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Chink or Wrong Way.
Yeah.
So, and then I joined the
Wrong Way.
military and it became Sodbuster. So
Okay.
I'll stick with that.
Well, you got a few of them.
like
That's good,
Sodbuster.
man. Yeah, it's good.
Sodbuster, I've had that for a long time.
You got any
so.
other ones, Cam?
Yeah.
No, I think a lot of times when I text you, I think Sodbuster is what we
Yeah.
what we call you. So.
Yeah. Cam's Blue Hornet.
Blue Hornet.
Oh, it's going to be forever Blue Hornet now. When I see it.
Absolutely.
But Cal, thank you very much, man.
Yeah,
we
thank
really
you.
appreciate it. It's great to have you on. If you can go find us, like us on Facebook, and we would love that from everybody. We appreciate everybody listening in. We've gotten great feedback, and so we appreciate all of our guests and
Yeah.
appreciate LDR Studios for putting this together and this amazing, beautiful place that we're hanging out in here down in Nashville, Tennessee.
Can we mention
Is it?
where
It's
we
got.
are?
I mean, I don't see why we can't. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Imagine Studio.
Yeah, this
right.
is yeah.
Mercy Me.
Yeah,
Pretty
Bart
amazing.
Millard
Keel.
and Mercy Me. This is their studio.
It's an
and,
amazing place.
Yeah, Bart was kind enough to let us have this place. So
Yeah, but thank you again, my friend. You are amazing. We appreciate you here. Appreciate all you do, and we appreciate everybody listening to us today.
Yeah,
so
thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
until next time, I guess, as they say.
God bless America.
Amen. Let's go.
God bless America.
We're out. There, you got the clap.
God, I need a refuge, someone I can talk to. When it seems all hope is gone, so build me a refuge, somewhere I can run to. Someplace that feels like home.